Have you ever rewritten the same email so many times and then never even hit send? Have you ever refused to start a project because the perfect idea just hadn't come to you yet? Or started something only to abandon it halfway through because it wasn't turning out exactly the way you'd pictured it? Have you ever hidden your work from other people because it just wasn't good enough yet? Or maybe you've wanted to be the perfect mom, the perfect colleague, the perfect partner, the perfect child, the perfect friend, the best of the best, in every single area of your life, all at once? If you answered yes to any of these, well, chances are, as fellow perfectionists, we have a lot of behavioral patterns in common. Let me explain a little more and share a truth that took me years to understand. One I paid a real price for, believing the wrong definition of perfectionism. Perfectionism is not a high standard. It's a survival strategy, and it comes with a heavy price. I'm a recovering perfectionist, someone who got tired of being paralyzed by her own mind. And at some point, right in the middle of real struggle and desperation, decided to study this seriously and become her own rescuer. Let me start with a definition that surprised even me. Perfectionism is not the pursuit of excellence. The philosopher Alain de Botton describes it as an unreasonable, self-defeating ambition to get something absolutely right. An ambition so intense it makes us difficult to be around and exhausting to live inside of. Psychologists, the researchers who laid the groundwork for modern perfectionism research, take it a step further. Perfectionism, they say, isn't just a personality trait. It's an entire way your personality is built, structured around one core demand, that you, the people around you, or both, have to be flawless. And here's the thing, the real danger isn't the exhausting pursuit of a high standard itself. It's our emotional reaction when we fall short of our own mental ideal. Shame, anxiety, mental paralysis, and that merciless feeling of I'm never enough. Large-scale, cross-generational research has shown that perfectionism has risen significantly among younger generations since the late 1980s, especially the type tied to social pressure. The consequences are nothing to brush off: burnout, depression, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, and the one most of us know all too well, chronic procrastination. We haven't gotten healthier, we've just gotten more perfectionistic. So if you've been wearing the word perfectionist like a badge of honor, taking pride in how good and flawless you are at everything you do, my friend, you've been going about it the wrong way. It's time to prepare yourself for a real shift, to look at this with a clear scientific lens and finally pull yourself out of this endless trap. When I started studying perfectionism seriously, one realization hit me hard. Perfectionism never actually leads to perfection. Because if you think about it logically, in all of human history, perfectionism has never once led to absolute perfection. Because imperfection and failure are a guaranteed part of every human story. That's what we call the Sisyphean tragedy of perfectionism. What does that mean? It means we're pushing hard, rolling a massive boulder up a hill that has no summit. Every time we think we're getting close to the top, the standard in our mind climbs a little higher, and the boulder rolls back down, and we're forced to start all over again. It's an exhausting, destination-less journey. And that's exactly why doing the work and actually finishing it wears us out before we ever reach the finish line. Honestly, learning about the different types of perfectionism and the strategies for breaking free from it is genuinely helping me get a handle on it and use it to become a better version of myself. The truth is, being a perfectionist isn't inherently bad. It's how we respond to it that turns it into a real problem and a source of anxiety and disappointment. So the real question is, where does perfectionism come from? How many types are there? And more importantly, how do you break free from it? Not all perfectionism looks the same. In fact, researchers have identified three main dimensions: self-oriented perfectionism, other-oriented perfectionism, and socially prescribed perfectionism. Let's look at each one. Self-oriented perfectionism. You set impossible standards for yourself. You're your own harshest critic. This type can sometimes drive success, but when that inner voice turns harsh and punishing, it's strongly linked to depression and burnout. Other-oriented perfectionism. You expect the people around you to be flawless. Your partner, your team, your family. This is the type that destroys relationships. You're not just hard on yourself, you're hard on everyone. Socially prescribed perfectionism. This one is the most complex and the most dangerous. Here, the person believes that others, parents, bosses, audiences, society expect them to be flawless, and that their worth hinges on living up to that expectation. And here's the key point. This external expectation is often internalized, meaning even when nobody is actually demanding that standard from us, we carry that imaginary judgment inside our own heads, as if we're being watched by an invisible observer. That's why this type has shown the strongest link to anxiety disorders, clinical depression, and even suicidal thoughts. And in today's social media culture, especially among younger generations, this type has been amplified dramatically. Researchers also distinguish between two more types: adaptive perfectionism and maladaptive perfectionism, which have one important difference. Adaptive perfectionism means striving for a high standard while still being kind to ourselves, accepting failure, and not tying our self-worth to the result. Maladaptive perfectionism involves that same striving, but with a constant fear of failure, and our sense of worth completely tied to the outcome. The first can be a strength. The second silently consumes lives. The difference isn't in the standard. It's in our relationship with ourselves when we fall short. Honestly, I have the self-oriented and the socially prescribed types of perfectionism. The self-oriented type shows up when I've edited a video multiple times and still don't feel satisfied. The socially prescribed one kicks in when I imagine a stranger judging me. And right there, I freeze. I think caring too much about what other people think is rooted in this socially prescribed perfectionism. Recognizing which type was active at any given moment was a real turning point for me. The honest answer from clinical psychology is that perfectionism is rarely actually about success. Almost always, it's a coping mechanism that took shape in the earliest years of life. And it has three main roots. The first root is conditional love in childhood. Research on shame shows that perfectionism is essentially a 20-ton shield we carry to protect ourselves from judgment. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned that we were lovable when we performed well, and when we didn't, we were a disappointment. So perfection became the price of belonging. Alain de Botton says, perfectionism is rooted in self-hatred, sparked by memories of being disapproved of or neglected by those who should have warmly esteemed us in childhood. The second root is the gap between imagination and reality. This part really changed how I see things. Humans love the pain-free version of growth, like someone who buys a set of dumbbells and expects the muscles to appear out of sheer respect for the purchase. Debatten says perfectionism grows in the fertile gap between our noble visions and our mediocre reality. We can easily picture an ideal version of what we want, the perfect novel, the perfect career, the perfect marriage, but building any of them is extraordinarily hard. The problem isn't that we're ambitious. The problem is that we underestimate how hard the path really is. And the moment we try to begin, that gap is so wide the brain processes it as a threat. This is a survival mechanism. When the brain sees a huge gap between where we are and where we want to be, the amygdala, the region responsible for threat detection, fires up, and the system shifts into fight, flight, or freeze mode. At the same time, activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making and starting things, gets suppressed. In practice, we either don't start at all, that's procrastination, the flight response, or we abandon the task halfway through. That's the freeze response. This doesn't mean we're lazy or unmotivated. Actually, when the process isn't going well, because we've underestimated how hard it is, the perfectionist reads this as proof of their own inadequacy, rather than seeing it as a natural part of the work itself. The brain isn't wrong to be afraid because it simply hasn't been given an honest budget for the path ahead. So it slips into survival mode, trying to protect us from a threat that isn't actually real. The third root is cultural pressure. We live in a world where everything is an edited, curated version. We see other people's polished final products and compare them to our messy first drafts. You've probably heard the saying, don't compare other people's highlight reel to your behind the scenes. Research shows that this culture, generation by generation, is making perfectionism worse. And what it means is, the current culture really isn't on your side. You can't fight a problem you've misdiagnosed. When I finally understood that my perfectionism wasn't a high standard but an old shield against the fear of not being enough, its power started to fade. Now you know what you're actually dealing with. Okay, so far we talked about what perfectionism actually is and where it comes from. But knowing about it isn't the same as changing it. Now, let's dive into some practical strategies to help you overcome it. These strategies come from cognitive behavioral therapy, self-compassion research, and neuroscience. None of them are quick fixes, but they do work. Effect labeling. When the wave of perfectionism hits, don't say, I have high standards. Say, I'm afraid of failure right now. Neuroscience research has shown that simply naming an emotion reduces amygdala activity and brings the prefrontal cortex back online. And it's exactly that prefrontal control that lets you respond with clarity instead of anxiety. Perfectionism only has power when it stays unnamed. Once you see it clearly, it becomes something you can choose to set down. Realistic difficulty budgeting. Before starting any project, ask, how long did this actually take the people who succeeded at it? Not the final polished result. Look into the drafts, the dead ends, the hidden labor behind it. If you under-budget for difficulty, every hardship feels like proof of your inadequacy. If you budget honestly, hardship is just part of the work. The evidence list. Keep a running list titled, Things I Was Sure Would Matter, but Didn't. Every time you catastrophize over a typo, an awkward sentence, an embarrassing moment, write it down. Wait a week. come back and look at it. Your perfectionist brain treats every prediction of disaster as fact, never checking back to see if it was actually true. This list forces that check. Over time, you'll build solid evidence that your catastrophizing brain isn't reliable. And once you can see the pattern in black and white, it gets a lot harder to believe the next, "this is going to ruin everything." Decide where to aim for an A+. Your time and energy are finite. Where is a B good enough? And where do you genuinely need an A+? What actually works here is committing to a defined endpoint. We are not supposed to be the best at everything, in every task. I used to drag every process out, editing, re-editing, then editing again. That exhausting cycle wore me out long before I ever finished anything. This is the skill I'm still learning, when to say, "this is done." The 5-minute physical start. The hardest part of any task is starting. Look at the difficulty realistically, but don't make it bigger than it actually is. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Open the file, write one line. Just begin. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. If you take only one sentence from this video, let it be this: you don't need to start perfectly. You just need to start. The first clumsy step is worth more than 1,000 imaginary perfect ones. Deliberate self-compassion practice. Research backs this up too. People who talk to themselves the way they'd talk to a struggling friend end up with better mental health and more motivation. We perfectionists fear that kindness toward ourselves will make us lazy. Science says the exact opposite is true. Here's something deeply personal I want to share. One of the hardest things I've learned about myself is this: I am the first person who says no to me. The feeling of not being enough, of not being ready yet, makes me reject myself before the world even has a chance to. I keep waiting to be ready, waiting for the perfect conditions, and then I'll start. The result? I've missed so many opportunities. If a no has to come, let it come from the world, not from you to yourself. Collect failure stories. Pick someone you admire, then go find out how they actually got there. Read the biography and watch the long-form interview, not the highlight reel. You'll notice something: the failures outnumber the wins by a lot. Most of it never makes it into the headline version of their story. That's the part perfectionism hides from you. It shows you the finished result and skips the 200 attempts that didn't work. So here's the exercise. Next time you admire someone, don't just ask what they built. Ask what they got wrong first, and how many times. That's where the real story starts. Perfectionism was a strategy that a younger version of you built to stay safe and to stay loved. It worked, up to a point. But beyond that point, it became the source of your anxiety, your procrastination, and your diminished performance. You don't have to hate it. You can thank it for trying to protect you. And now, gently, choose to set it down. If any part of this video moved you, I'd love to hear in the comments, which type of perfectionism do you see in yourself? And which strategy will you try first? Well, that's everything I wanted to share with you today. If this gave you something to think about it, hit subscribe. We're going deeper into anxiety, self-worth, and real change, one honest video at a time. Thanks for watching to the end. See you in the next one.